What if the most unexpected person in Foundation Season 3 turns out to be the one who decides the future of the entire galaxy? Not Hari Seldon, not Gal Dornick, not even the mighty Cleon's but Bayta. Her name might sound small compared to the Mule's terrifying shadow. But what if Bayta is actually the piece of the puzzle that changes everything? Bayta Darell is one of those names that longtime readers of Isaac Asimov's Foundation series immediately recognize. But for viewers who only know the Apple TV Plus version, she might feel like a mysterious new face. To understand why Bayta is important, we need to go back to the original novels and see where she comes into the story. In Asimov's books, Bayta is not a warrior, not a ruler, not even a scientist with powerful equations. She is introduced as an ordinary woman, living her life far from the massive empires and the great scientific plans that dominate the galaxy. Yet, as the story unfolds, she becomes one of the most critical figures in the entire saga. Because Bayta does what no one else dares. She makes a choice that even Hari Seldon's plan could not predict. In the original story, Bayta is married to Darell, and together they live on the planet Haven. At first, her role feels almost secondary. She is supportive, loving, and deeply human. In contrast to the cold and logical calculations of the Second Foundation and the ever-spreading power of the First Foundation, but Asimov's genius was always about showing how ordinary people could end up having extraordinary impact. Bayta is the perfect example of this. Now, when we look at Foundation's adaptation on Apple TV Plus, things are a little different. The showrunners have taken big creative liberties. They reimagined characters like Demerzel, changed the role of Gal Dornick, and gave the Cleon dynasty a central focus that never existed in the books. This means Bayta's story will almost certainly be different too. But even if her path changes, her core function might remain the same. She represents humanity in its rawest form. She isn't someone with mathematical predictions or imperial bloodlines. She's someone who relies on her emotions, her courage, and her instinct. And in a universe where machines, empires, and mutants try to control everything, that makes her very dangerous and very important. Let's think about why Bayta is introduced now. The timing is not random. By the end of Season 2, the galaxy feels like it's spinning out of control. The Cleons are fractured, the Foundation is growing stronger, and whispers of the Mule figure who can manipulate emotions and crush entire worlds are starting to spread. So why bring in Bayta? The answer may be that the showrunners are preparing us for a clash that is not just about armies or empires, but about human choices. And Bayta in the books is the person who makes one of the boldest choices in the entire saga. In simple words, Bayta is the opposite of the Mule. The Mule controls emotions, twisting people's hearts and minds to serve him. Bayta, however, acts from pure emotion that cannot be manipulated. She isn't predictable. She isn't part of the plan, and that unpredictability could be the one thing that the Mule cannot fight against. But here's the interesting part. In the Apple TV Plus series, Bayta's role may be rewritten to surprise both book readers and new viewers. She could still be the one who stands against the Mule, or she could be reshaped into someone who has a more direct connection to him. Imagine if Bayta isn't just an enemy of the Mule, but somehow linked to his rise. That would flip the original story completely, creating new drama and tension. So who is Bayta in simple terms? She's the human heart in a galaxy full of cold plans, rulers, and manipulators. She's the character who reminds us that one choice, one action can undo even the most carefully built system. And as we move deeper into Season 3, every sign points to her becoming one of the most important figures in the struggle against the Mule. The Mule is not just another villain in Foundation. He is one of the most terrifying forces in the entire saga, not because of the size of his armies or the wealth of his empire, but because of what he can do to the human mind. In a galaxy filled with emperors, scientists, and machines, the Mule represents something entirely different, a living, breathing disruption to Hari Seldon's plan. And that disruption is what makes him unforgettable. Let's start with his origin in the books. The Mule is introduced in Asimov's Foundation and Empire. He begins as a mysterious conqueror, rising from obscurity with shocking speed. Nobody knows where he came from, and nobody knows how he can achieve such quick victories. At first, people think he's just a brilliant military commander, but soon it becomes clear that his power runs much deeper. The Mule has the ability to alter human emotions. He can twist fear into loyalty, turn doubt into faith, and bend entire populations to his will without lifting a sword. It's not technology. It's not strategy. It's something far more personal, something that attacks the very core of human freedom. Now, think about what this means in the world of Foundation. Seldon created his great plan to guide humanity across centuries of chaos. His equations predicted the fall of the Galactic Empire and the rise of a second Foundation. But the plan relied on one key idea. Human behavior, when studied in massive numbers, is predictable. Seldon believed that large populations always follow certain patterns, and his math could anticipate those patterns across time. The Mule breaks this assumption completely, because with his powers, he can change human behavior on a massive scale. He can rewrite emotions, which means he can rewrite history, and that makes him a nightmare for Seldon's plan. In the Apple TV Plus series, the Mule has already been teased. We saw glimpses of him in Season 2, and even though he didn't appear fully in the story, his presence was undeniable. We know he exists. We know he's coming. The series showed a haunting vision of Galdornik seeing the Mule as a force that would devastate everything. This sets the stage for Season 3, to bring him into the spotlight. But here's where things get interesting. The show doesn't always follow the books. They often change details, expand backstories, or shift timelines. That means the Mule might be revealed in a way that surprises both new viewers and longtime Asimov fans. So, who is the Mule in the show's version? Based on what we know so far, he will likely be presented not only as a conqueror, but as a deeply tragic figure. The books describe him as someone who looks weak, frail, almost clown-like in appearance. He is not the kind of person who looks like a galactic conqueror. This contrast is intentional. The Mule rises not because of physical strength or charisma, but because of his unnatural gift. The show could play with this same theme. A figure who looks small, even broken, but who wields unimaginable power. What makes the Mule even scarier is the way he conquers. Unlike a typical emperor who rules with armies, the Mule doesn't need loyalty earned through politics or fear. He takes loyalty by force directly inside the human heart. Imagine a world where your deepest emotions are not your own. Imagine feeling loyal to someone you hate, or loving someone you should fear. That is the reality of living under the Mule's shadow. And when millions of people experience this, entire civilizations fall without resistance. But here's the most chilling part. The Mule's power makes him unpredictable. Seldon's equations can't account for one man who can change the emotional balance of billions. His rise is a fluke, an anomaly, something that should not exist in the timeline. That unpredictability is why he comes so close to destroying the Seldon plan completely. For viewers of the show, this means that every moment with the Mule will carry tension, because the rules we thought governed the Foundation universe suddenly no longer apply. Another point worth noting is how the Mule views himself. In the books, he isn't just a conqueror for the sake of conquest. He is lonely. His ability to manipulate emotions means he can never experience genuine love or loyalty. Every friend, every follower, every devotee, he knows they only feel that way because he made them feel that way. In this sense, the Mule is not only powerful, but also deeply tragic. He is a man who can control everyone except himself. If the Apple TV Plus series leans into this, the Mule could become one of the most complex villains we've seen in modern sci-fi television, someone we fear, but also someone we understand, and this brings us back to Bayta. Why is the Mule so important to her story? Because she is one of the few people who manages to stand against him not with armies, not with power, but with a single choice, a deeply human decision that the Mule cannot control. This is why her connection to him is so fascinating. On one side, you have the Mule, a mutant who can bend the galaxy with his powers. On the other, you have Bayta, an ordinary woman whose humanity makes her unpredictable. It's the clash between control and free will, between manipulation and emotion, between destiny and choice. So to sum it up, The Mule is not just a villain. He's a storm that breaks the very logic of the Foundation universe. He's a mutant with a gift so unnatural that it terrifies both empires and mathematicians. He is the ultimate challenge to Hari Seldon's plan. And in Season 3, all signs point to him stepping out of the shadows and into the center of the stage. The question is, when he does, will Bayta be his undoing, or will she become something even more unexpected? To understand why Bayta Darell is so important in Season 3, we need to step back into Isaac Asimov's novels and see the shocking role she plays in the original story. If you've only watched the Apple TV Plus series so far, Bayta may feel like a mysterious newcomer. But to book readers, she's one of the most unforgettable characters in the entire Foundation saga, because she's the one who stands against the Mule in a way nobody else dares. In Foundation and Empire, Bayta is introduced as the wife of Darell, and at first, she doesn't seem like someone who will change galactic history. She isn't a political leader, she isn't a mathematician, and she doesn't have access to great armies or technology. She's just an ordinary woman caught up in extraordinary events. But Asimov loved to show that history isn't only shaped by emperors and rulers. It can also be changed by the choices of ordinary people. And Bayta's choice becomes one of the most powerful moments in the entire saga. Here's what happens in the novels. Bayta and Taran get caught up in the rising storm of the Mule's conquest. Along the way, they encounter a strange, clown-like figure named Magnifico. He seems weak, pitiful, even harmless. Bayta shows him kindness, protects him, and takes him along their journey. For most of the story, Magnifico appears to be just a tragic victim of the Mule's cruelty. Someone who has lost everything to this terrifying conqueror. But then comes the twist. The truth is revealed. Magnifico is the Mule himself, hiding in plain sight. The conqueror, who can bend entire civilizations to his will, has been traveling with Bayta and Taran all along. Disguised as a pitiful clown, it is one of Asimov's greatest surprises because it flips the entire narrative upside down. Everything the characters and the readers thought they knew suddenly changes in an instant. And here is where Bayta's role becomes legendary. When the truth comes out, Bayta realizes that the Mule cannot be stopped by logic, by plans, or by armies. He's simply too powerful. But there's one thing he cannot control, a single act of free will. In the book, Bayta makes a shocking decision. She kills Ebling Miss, the scientist who was about to reveal the location of the second Foundation to the Mule. By doing this, she sacrifices knowledge, she sacrifices clarity. But she also prevents the Mule from discovering his greatest enemy. It is a choice born from pure emotion, pure instinct, and it works. This moment is so important because it shows that Hari Seldon's plan, while vast, is mathematical and logical, cannot predict everything. The plan cannot account for one person's unpredictable courage. Bayta becomes the embodiment of that unpredictability. She proves that humanity is more than numbers on a page, more than a formula for behavior. Humanity has emotion, spontaneity, and choice, and that is something even the Mule cannot fully conquer. Now, let's pause and think about what this means for the Apple TV Plus series. The show has already made major changes to the source material. Characters like Galdornik and Salvor Hardin have been given new roles and arcs. Demerzel has been turned into a central figure, far beyond what Asimov originally wrote. And the Cleon dynasty, with its cloned emperors, is completely original to the adaptation. So we cannot assume that Bayta's role will play out exactly as it did in the books, but the essence of her story, the core of what she represents, could still remain. Bayta symbolizes the power of individual choice against overwhelming odds. She is proof that even in a galaxy ruled by empires and shaped by mathematical destiny, one human heart can still change everything. If the series wants to stay true to Asimov's spirit, Bayta will almost certainly become a key figure in resisting the Mule, even if the details are reimagined for television. Another important point is the relationship between Bayta and the Mule. In the books, she is the one who shows him kindness when he's disguised as Magnifico. This creates a strange connection between them, one based on trust, deception, and ultimately betrayal. The show could explore this dynamic in even deeper ways. Imagine Bayta being the one person the Mule cannot manipulate completely, the one person who makes him question his own power. That tension between them could become one of the most emotionally charged threads in Season 3. And here's where the theories really begin to heat up. If Bayta is being introduced at this exact point in the story, it almost guarantees that her path will cross with the Mule's. The question is, how? Will the series follow the novel, with Bayta playing the role of the unexpected resistor who blocks the Mule's plans at the last moment? Or will the show twist her fate, making her even more deeply tied to the Mule, perhaps as someone he tries to manipulate, someone he grows attached to, or even someone whose choices reshape his destiny in ways the books never imagined? The one thing we can be sure of is this: Bayta is not just another supporting character. In the books, she is the heart of one of the most shocking and game-changing moments in the saga. And if Season 3 is bold enough to honor that, Bayta could become the most important character in the fight against the Mule. If there's one thing every fan of Apple TV's Foundation knows, it's this: the show does not stick closely to Isaac Asimov's novels. Instead, it treats the books like a Foundation pun, intended in, then builds something entirely new on top of them. For book readers, this has been both exciting and controversial. On one hand, it brings fresh life to a classic story. On the other, it raises big questions. Which parts of Asimov's story will remain, and which will be completely rewritten? This question is especially important when we think about Bayta Darell and her role against the Mule, because if the show has taught us anything, it's that no character is guaranteed to follow the same path they took in the books. Let's look at a few examples. Take Demerzel. In Asimov's books, she is a minor figure, a servant of Emperor Cleon, mentioned only briefly. But in the series, she has become one of the most important characters of all. The show reimagines Demerzel as the eternal advisor to the Cleon dynasty, a robot bound by programming yet pulling the strings behind galactic history. Her arc is not just expanded, it's transformed. She is now a tragic, complex figure carrying the weight of millennia. And her actions drive the story forward in ways Asimov never wrote. Then there's the Cleon dynasty itself. The entire concept of cloned emperors, Brother Dawn, Brother Dusk, Brother Darkness doesn't exist in the books at all. This was created entirely for the series, and yet it has become one of the most compelling parts of the show. It gives us a human lens into the collapse of the Empire, showing us how power, identity, and tradition become fragile when tied to repetition and control. Or consider Gall Dornick. In Asimov's first book, Gall is only a brief character, appearing in the opening chapters as a young mathematician who witnesses the trial of Hari Seldon. After that, he disappears from the story. But in the show, Gall is turned into a central protagonist, traveling through time, guiding Salvor Hardin, and even glimpsing visions of the Mule's future destruction. Gall's role is massively expanded, making her one of the emotional anchors of the entire adaptation. Even Salvor Hardin was changed. In the books, Salvor is the first mayor of Terminus and a strategist who helps the Foundation survive its early crises. In the show, however, Salvor is reimagined as a completely different character, tied to Gall Dornick through a genetic link, given psychic abilities, and placed at the heart of the galaxy's great struggle. All of these examples tell us something very important. Foundation on Apple TV Plus is not afraid to rewrite history. It's not afraid to break from Asimov's structure. And that means Bayta Darell's story, while inspired by the novels, could take a very different shape on screen. So what does this mean for her connection to the Mule? In the books, Bayta is the one who stops him by making a shocking, emotional decision that changes everything. But in the show, her role might be twisted in ways we don't expect. For example, she could be introduced earlier in the story as someone directly tied to the Foundation's leadership. She might be reimagined with a personal connection to the Mule, perhaps as someone he tries to manipulate or even someone from his past. Or the show could surprise everyone by making Bayta's fate darker, turning her from the Mule's destroyer into his unwilling ally. This is the creative tension of watching Foundation. Fans of the books know the roadmap, but the showrunners keep changing the road. And while this sometimes frustrates purists, it also creates a sense of suspense. Because now, Even those who know Asimov's work by heart cannot predict exactly what will happen. It's worth noting, too, that Foundation has been structured for television in a way that makes drama and emotional arcs more important than cold logic. The book's often read like thought experiments, filled with grand ideas, but not always with deep personal stories. The show, however, thrives on character-driven drama relationships. Betrayals, love, loss, and the clash of human emotions against destiny. That means Bayta's role in the series will likely be more emotional, more layered, and more personal than in the books. And this is exactly why her connection to the Mule could be one of the defining stories of Season 3, because the Mule is all about emotions controlling them, twisting them, breaking them. Bayta, in the novels, represents the one human heart that cannot be controlled. If the show keeps that spirit but adapts the details, we might see a Bayta who is even more deeply entangled with the Mule than Asimov ever imagined. So, when comparing the show to the books, the message is clear. Expect the unexpected. The Cleons were rewritten. Gall was transformed. Demerzel was elevated. And Bayta? She could be reimagined into something even more powerful, even more dramatic, and even more surprising than anything readers of the novels have seen before. In storytelling, especially in a show like Foundation, nothing is ever placed by accident. A glance, a single line of dialogue, even a passing vision can be a seed planted for something bigger down the line. And when it comes to Season 2, many fans believe that the groundwork for Bayta's arrival and her eventual connection to the Mule has already been quietly laid out. The challenge is spotting the clues before they bloom. Let's start with one of the biggest, Goldornick's vision of the future. In Season 2, Gall sees haunting glimpses of a world dominated by the Mule. We see the devastation he brings, overwhelming despair he causes, and the sense that no one can resist him. This vision is important because it doesn't just warn us about the Mule, it tells us that the fight against him will be deeply personal. Gall's future sight suggests that key individuals will matter more than massive armies or political powers. This is a classic setup for Bayta's role. She represents that single individual who can change the game in a way no one expects. Another clue comes from the way the show has framed emotional power. Season 2 repeatedly stressed that the greatest battles are not only about physical strength, but about control of the human heart. We saw this in the Cleons with Brother Day's obsession with loyalty and Brother Dawn's struggle for individuality. We saw it in Gall and Salvor's relationship, where love and sacrifice shaped their destinies. And we saw it in Demerzel, torn between her programming and her longing for freedom. All of these threads highlight the central theme that emotions are not just background noise, they are the battlefield itself. Enter the Mule, who embodies the power to manipulate emotions, and enter Bayta, who could symbolize the one heart that resists. We can also look at how Season 2 treated the idea of unpredictability. Hari Seldon's plan works because people are predictable in large numbers. But cracks began to show in Season 2. Characters like Gall, Salvor, and even Demerzel began making choices that defied the expectations of the plan. The series leaned into the danger of anomalies, figures who break the rules of history. The Mule is the ultimate anomaly. But Season 2's focus on unpredictability might have been planting the idea that another anomaly exists too. Bayta, someone who is not part of Seldon's calculations, but whose single choice could alter everything. Then there's the question of identity and disguise. One of the most powerful twists in Asimov's books is that the Mule hides his identity as Magnifico, the clown. In Season 2, we saw multiple storylines about hidden identities and false appearances, Brother Dawn hiding his love affair, Brother Day discovering betrayal in his own ranks, and even Tellum Bond representing a false promise of safety and guidance. This constant theme of masks and hidden truths may have been foreshadowing Bayta's eventual discovery of the Mule's true nature. After all, she is the one who learns to see past the disguise in the novels. Another subtle but telling piece of foreshadowing is the emphasis on ordinary characters in extraordinary situations. Think of Hober Mallow in Season 2. He wasn't born a hero, but he became crucial to the Foundation's survival. Think of Bel Rios, a loyal commander caught between honor and a crumbling empire. These characters remind us that history and Foundation is not always shaped by the biggest names, but sometimes by the people who step forward when destiny calls. This mirrors Bayta's book role perfectly. She doesn't start as a legendary figure, she becomes one impossible choice. Season 2's focus on these kinds of characters feels like a quiet preparation for Bayta's arc in Season 3. There's also the emotional weight of sacrifice. In Season 2, Salver sacrifices herself to protect Gull's future. Many characters give up their lives or freedom for something bigger. This theme of sacrifice connects directly to Bayta's eventual role. In the books, her decision to act against the Mule requires enormous sacrifice. She gives up knowledge that could change the galaxy just to stop him. Season 2 prepared us to expect these painful, emotional sacrifices from key characters. Finally, let's not ignore the Mule's shadow itself. Though he wasn't physically present in Season 2, his influence was everywhere. The fear of his coming, the devastation shown in visions, and the whispers of his rise created an atmosphere of dread. This shadow is not random, it's deliberate foreshadowing. The show wants us to feel the Mule before we see him, and when Bayta arrives in Season 3, she will walk directly into this shadow. The seeds of their connection have already been planted in the sense of inevitability that Season 2 left behind, so when we look back, Season 2 may have been less about direct clues and more about thematic preparation. The vision of the Mule, the emphasis on emotional battles, the unpredictability of human choices, the danger of disguises, the power of sacrifice. All of these ideas orbit around the same central truth. Someone small, someone unexpected, will be the one to stand against the Mule, and that someone is Bayta. Season 2 didn't just set up the villain, it set up the stage for the unlikely hero.